Have you ever stood at the edge of the ocean, looked out at the vast, endless blue, and wondered what secrets it holds? We think of history as something buried under dirt and sand. But what if the greatest lost chapter of the human story isn't buried under land at all, but submerged beneath the waves? Today, we're diving deep, far beyond recorded history, to a time when the world looked very different, a time when the oceans receded, and a forgotten civilization may have flourished on shores that no longer exist. This isn't just a fantasy. This is a journey into a scientifically plausible, yet incredibly mysterious, period of our past. Welcome to the era of the last glacial maximum, a time around 20,000 years ago when colossal ice sheets locked up immense amounts of the world's water. Sea levels weren't just a little lower, they were dramatically lower. We're talking about a drop of up to 120 meters, or nearly 400 feet. Imagine what that would mean. Coastlines would have extended hundreds of miles further out than they do today, what we now know as shallow seas, like the North Sea, the Persian Gulf, or the waters between Southeast Asia and Australia. Where'd it then bust exposed plains? Land bridges connected continents. Great Britain was a peninsula of Europe. You could have walked from Siberia to Alaska. These weren't barren wastelands. Climate models suggest many of these new coastal plains were incredibly fertile, teeming with life. They would have been crisscrossed by massive river systems, dotted with freshwater lakes, and home to rich estuaries, where marine and terrestrial ecosystems met. For early modern humans, hunter-gatherers, looking for the best places to live, these exposed continental shelves would have been paradise. Think about it from their perspective. Access to abundant seafood from the coast, fresh water from the rivers, and herds of game on the plains. It would have been the most resource-rich environment on the planet. And this is where our story truly begins. Because if this was the best real estate on Earth, it stands to reason that it is where a significant portion of the human population would have lived. Not just lived, but thrived. Could these resource-rich havens have been the cradle for the first large, settled communities, long before the agricultural revolution we read about in history books? This is the central mystery. If a civilization, or at least a complex culture, emerged on these lost coastlines, what happened to it? The answer is as simple as it is terrifying. The ice began to melt. Starting around 14,500 years ago, the planet began to warm up. Glaciers retreated, and all that locked-up water flowed back into the oceans. But it wasn't a gentle process. It was a relentless, multi-generational catastrophe. For the people living on these coastal plains, the world they knew began to shrink. Imagine living in a village where, every year, the high tide mark creeps a little closer. Your grandparents tell stories of hunting grounds that are now underwater. Sacred sites, once inland, are now battered by waves. This wasn't a single flood event. It was a slow, inexorable drowning of their entire world, unfolding over thousands of years. Entire landscapes, complete with their homes, their hunting grounds, and their ancestral memories, were swallowed by the rising sea. The people would have been forced to retreat, pushed inland, generation after generation. This brings us to one of the most intriguing questions in prehistory. Could the global flood myths be a distant, fragmented memory of this very real event? Nearly every culture around the world, from the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the stories of Noah Manu in India and the legends of countless indigenous peoples, has a story of a great flood that wiped out a former world. For a long time, these were dismissed as mere fables. But what if they are the echoes of a shared human trauma, passed down through millennia? The survivors of the drowned coastlands, scattered and displaced, would have carried these stories with them, memories of a paradise lost to the waves. The challenge, of course, is finding proof. How do you practice archaeology 100 meters underwater? It's incredibly difficult and expensive. Yet, we are starting to find tantalizing clues. Off the coast of India in the Gulf of Cambay, sonar surveys have revealed what appear to be the geometric patterns of a submerged city, with artifacts dredged up that have been dated to over 9,000 years ago, far older than any known city in the region. In the North Sea, an area now called Doggerland, fishing trawlers have pulled up everything from prehistoric tools to the bones of mammoths and ancient humans, remnants of a lost Mesolithic heartland that once connected Britain to Europe. These discoveries are just the beginning. They are pinpricks of light in a vast, dark abyss of the unknown. We are developing the technology underwater drones, sophisticated sonar, and submersibles that can finally allow us to map and explore these lost landscapes in detail. We are on the verge of being able to systematically search for the settlements, the artifacts, and the evidence of the people who lived there. What would finding a true, submerged prehistoric civilization mean? It would rewrite the very first chapter of the human story. It would prove that complex societies didn't just begin with farming in the Fertile Crescent. It would suggest that humanity was more advanced, more settled, and more populous, far earlier than we ever imagined. It would mean that a huge part of our heritage is not under our feet, but under the sea. The story of this forgotten civilization is a profound lesson for us today. Their world was transformed by climate change, a natural cycle of warming that they were powerless to stop. They faced rising sea levels that forced them to abandon their homes and their entire way of life. As we face our own challenges with the changing climate and rising oceans, their story serves as a powerful, humbling reminder. It reminds us of the fragility of our own coastlines and the enduring power of the ocean. So the next time you look out at the sea, remember what might lie beneath. A lost world, a forgotten history. The story of a people who lived at the edge of the world, until the world's edge moved and swallowed them whole. The search for this forgotten civilization is one of the last great frontiers of exploration on our own planet, and what we find might just change everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into our planet's hidden past. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the great mysteries of history. Let me know in the comments what you think could flood myths be the memory of these lost lands. Until next time, keep questioning.